Okay, you don't need a cinema camera to get cinematic shots. That's a pretty fair thing to say. Again, what do you define as cinematic? Because if you're using like a camcorder from the 90s, regardless of what you do, it might not look cinematic to a certain level just because of the general quality of the footage. But to a degree, you could argue that you could make a lot of different things look cinematic to some level. Again, what defines cinematic? Is it the sound design? Is it the lighting? Is it, the image quality of the camera itself? It's probably a combination of these things, really, because if you're watching like the best camera ever, but there's no sound, it might not be as cinematic as like a middle range camera, but with amazing sound design, like in terms of the editing as well as like the audio that's been recorded and stuff like that. If you're like recording audio on set, stuff like that. So keep that in mind. One of the main things that's going to help you to just kind of use just a more average camera, like for example this Panasonic GH5, if you wanted this to look cinematic, it's going to be probably a lot in your lighting, your lens choice. Not necessarily lens choice, but lens choice can help if you're wanting to get like a blurry background. But again, like background blur doesn't necessarily, like, it might help things look kind of cinematic to a degree, but like background blur, it's fair to say is like, background blur is not everything. And nowadays, like I might have known this to some level before this guy pointed this out, but I was watching this video on YouTube and they were interviewing the cinematographer who's kind of like an older fella. And, it kind of, or no, maybe it was the guy that was commentating on the interview. Somebody said, credit to whoever said this, that like, they talked about some level of like obsession about, like nowadays that people are like obsessed with background blur. And it's just fair to say that seems to be the case. Like, people might just kind of automatically equate background blur with cinematic, but what if it's like missing everything else? Like, yeah, like it might have a blurry background, but what if the shot is just generally kind of uninteresting? You know what I mean? And then like you could look at some older films that might have cinematic shots and a lot of stuff is in focus. There might not be a whole lot of background separation, might not be a whole lot of blur, but you still might think it looks cinematic. So probably a lot of it might be like in the lighting, right? So are you filming on the shadowy side of the subject? Like, are you filming on the shadow side of the subject? So then you're kind of getting that light hitting them from the other angle, right? So kind of more something maybe like this. Maybe this is not the best example, but anyway. Then also like your sound design. Also, is there like something about the story behind what's happening that is intriguing? Because you could have like a great looking shot, but maybe it feels really hollow because it's like a terrible or uninteresting story. Like there's nothing that really kind of like is intriguing about it beyond kind of a base visual level. Because maybe in some cases what matters is the visual look more than other things, but in some cases, like if you're talking about something that is cinematic, there's probably, at least in the case of films, usually some sort of story that goes with it. So that might be worth considering as a certain element to it. But again, focus maybe more on the lighting. Like I've heard this from however many people, where it's like, focus on lighting more than the camera. Like the camera is going to matter to some degree, probably, depending on what it is that you want to do. But just having a camera that's like good enough, and then just really being good at the other parts of it, like the lighting, like the sound design, like storytelling, whatever. So consider these things. Probably one of the main things that's worth you looking into if you want to make things look more cinematic is your lighting setup. And so learn more about lighting, right? So yeah, you don't need, there's a fly in here. You don't need a cinema camera to get cinematic shots. You just kind of need to learn a few things about what to do. And so some of the things are things like I've already said. I might have missed some stuff, maybe I did, but at least the things that I said are maybe a good place to start. And just get like a camera that's like good enough. If you want something that's like good enough and an idea of what good enough looks like, getting like a half decent like APS-C or Micro Four Thirds camera, whether you're getting like a GH5, a GH4, a GH3, depending on how much money you want to spend, whether you get like a Sony, one of the Sony a6000 series cameras. I haven't used any of those, so like please look into the cameras you're thinking about. Like I haven't even used a GH4 or a GH3. I've mainly used the GH5. I've used a little bit of like a Samsung camera. I've used some other stuff. I've used a Sony a5100, which is like more budget than the a6000 stuff as far as I understand. So I haven't used a whole lot of stuff, but I've used some stuff, mainly the GH5, things like that. Anyway, I'll end that there. If you have questions, I have a Skool Community, link in description. Feel free to join there and ask some questions if you got some questions. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.